first did.
That's what I love about these high school girls, man. I get older, they stay the same age.
Honey!
What?
Where's my super suit?
Assemble.
What's up, YouTube? This is your friendly neighborhood movie nerd, back to give you guys everything that is going on in the world of movies and TV. So today we're here to talk about ensemble cast. What is an ensemble cast? It's a term that has a variety of different meanings and has been, to me at least, very, very confused in the last couple of years. An ensemble cast is made up of cast members in which the principal actors and performers are assigned roughly equal amounts of importance and screen time in a dramatic production. This kind of casting became more popular in television series because it allows flexibility for writers to focus on different characters in different episodes. In addition, the departure of players is less disruptive to the premise than it would be if the star of a production with a regularly structured cast were to leave the series. In Hollywood, the term has recently begun to be misused as a replacement for the old term all-star cast, just meaning a film with many well-known actors, even if most of them only have minor roles, sometimes just cameo appearances. But that's not exactly the case now, is it? Because more than not now, besides just the idea of the all-star cast, kind of the traditional film, but where every small part is played by a big-name actor, we still have plenty of those, but we've also gotten to a point now where we truly do see kind of the equivalent of a television ensemble where there is no main centralized character brought to the screen now multiple times over, almost to the point where it's done so seamlessly. So today, for my top 10 list, in honor of The Hunt being released this weekend, I'm going to be focusing on my top 10 favorite ensemble cast movies, kind of breaking down like which category they fit into. And also, I'm actually really pissed because Watch Mojo kind of stole most of my choices, but that's okay, whatever. I like to think that some of my choices are better than theirs. So without further ado, not only will this be another top 10, but it'll also be kind of, think of it as a little bit of like an education lesson, trying to figure out what exactly is an ensemble cast, what defines it, and kind of, if anything, the different micro categories that have formed over the years within this kind of subgenre. So without further ado, here are my top 10 favorite movies with ensemble casts. But of course, first, honorable mentions.
Who did this?
Did what? What are you talking about?
Jizzed all over the pages of this nice magazine I was nice enough to tell you about. Was it you, Seth?
No.
No?
It was me, Franco. I fucking made jizz in your magazine.
Frankie Four Fingers has a diamond the size of a fist.
86 carats.
You know something that I've done?
Jeez, it's flawless.
Where?
London. London. You know, fish, chips, cup of tea, Mary Poppins, London.
One of them starts bragging about how he just knocked over this guy's game for $100K. I don't know what it is with these guys. They can't keep their mouth shut about it.
Will not follow in my father's footsteps. Then the next level down, we feed him. I will create something for myself. Then by the time we hit the bottom level, we bring out the big guns.
My father doesn't want me to be him.
Keep working, keep a little change in my pocket.
Yeah? Wait.
Rather than spend my time listening to some dipshit who doesn't know what the hell he's talking about anyway.
Us helpless little girls.
It's time to prove to your friends that you're worth a damn. Sometimes that means dying.
They're like fucking Indians. You're not gonna see them, you're not gonna hear about them, except through me or Captain Queenan. You will not ever know the identity of undercover people. Unfortunately, this shithole has more fucking leaks than the Iraqi Navy.
Fuck yourself.
I'm tired from fucking your wife.
How's your mother?
Good, she's tired from fucking my father.
Avengers Infinity War, and again, like, I'm gonna keep this short because everyone's already talked about this movie ad nauseum. Just kind of how this translates into being a good ensemble piece is, besides again being the culminating Marvel movie that introduces every single Marvel hero that we've gotten to know at this point in their ultimate fight against Thanos, minus Hawkeye and Ant-Man. If you want to talk about how this movie works as an ensemble, the reason why I go with this over Endgame is because Endgame really only brings everybody back for the last like 10 minutes of the movie. The last half hour of the movie with the final fight, kind of how it introduces each and every single character, having them contribute to the plot and the trajectory of the story in a meaningful way that helps keep it tight, keep it consistent, keep it focused, and never makes it drag or have any excess baggage. It really is a tribute to the writers and the directors for being able to balance out that many characters and really have this be like when they said that you were going to see every single Marvel character in this movie, they really held up to that. And that I find is one of the things that helps that movie hold up. Like usually in ensemble movies, you see that an easy way to kind of get everybody together is through the use of a MacGuffin, you know, like with the example of It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World with the stolen, buried money. But the interesting thing that Infinity War does that I think not only sets it apart, but also makes it one of the best ensemble movies besides just being the culminating Marvel event is how it uses the relationship that Thanos has to each one of these heroes to help flesh out the story in addition to the quest for the Infinity Gems. The usual suspects. Now, needless to say, this movie is steeped in controversy, just given who the director is and Kevin Spacey and just everything that goes into it. But to use that as a grievance against the quality of this movie, I think is very short-sighted because needless to say, this is not only one of the best scripts that I've ever seen. Like the script in and of itself is an absolute genius. To me, fuck The Sixth Sense. This is the greatest twist that the 90s ever came up with. But the reason why I go with this movie over such other perennial mid to late 90s classics like Heat, because besides the fact of those movies have main characters, this movie does not. This movie has no central character. It is focused in the ensemble. Again, it's another one of those situations where the driving ensemble is the reason why this story and this twist work so well, because I feel like if you had a centralized character here, it would kind of take away from the overall impact of that ending, where obviously the whole twist being that Kevin Spacey is the guy behind everything, and the movie kind of pulls a switcheroo with that, where it kind of has Gabriel Byrne as its focus character, but the other guys play such an important part, you know, the Chaz Palminteri, Stephen Baldwin, Benicio del Toro, Kevin Pollak, each and every single one of those guys contributes to the plot and the trajectory of this story in a way in which I don't think this movie works without the use of its ensemble. 12 Angry Men, the movie that literally wrote the book on how to do an ensemble cast. I feel like I don't really need to talk about this movie a whole lot. This is a situation where, again, everybody knows about the power of this movie. One of the first movies to ever utilize the technique of the bottle setting. Again, you are, with the exception of the opening scene and the closing scene, you are only in the courtroom with these 12 guys, and how it literally just manages to flesh out character and how you get to know each and every single one of them through simple dialogue and exposition alone is genius, to say the least.
Excitable, sit down.
Excitable? You bet I'm excitable. We're trying to put a guilty man in the chair where he belongs. Someone starts telling us fairy tales and we're listening.
Again, this is an example that has been parodied to death, and it's because, again, through using dialogue and exposition to help flesh out and helping you get to know each and every one of these characters and their own individual relationship to the specific case in question is, to me, what makes this film not only a powerful ensemble film, but also one of the best films ever made. Ocean's 11. Now, this kind of qualifies in more of the camp of the movie star facet, where it's a little bit of a mix of both. Steven Soderbergh is another guy who very, very much knows how to play around with the ensemble cast, but I go with Ocean's 11, besides being, I think, to me, his most widely recognized and most well-liked film. I also go with this one because it's the idea of utilizing a bunch of superstars in order to lead the cast, while also having a supporting cast of primarily character actors and television stars, and having each and every one of them contribute to the plot in a meaningful way. And it helps because this is actually a point that Patrick H. Willems brought up, which is kind of the reason why we enjoy heist movies so much, which is because the idea of the heist kind of, in a way, is the spiritual representation of kind of the struggle of going through filmmaking, you know, setting up the plan, executing the plan, and then finishing it up, which is kind of a genius comparison that I never really thought about, but it actually really makes a lot of sense.
Well, say we do all that. We're just supposed to walk out of there with $150 million in cash on us without getting stopped?
Yeah.
And this is the example that I find helps back that up immensely, which is where, to me, again, the idea of a truly great ensemble piece where no part of the cast has any small part and every single cast member contributes to the plot and the story in a meaningful way. And that is absolutely the case here. Saving Private Ryan. Now, you guys are going to notice a trend here, which is that a lot of these movies happen to be some of my favorite movies of all time. What can I say? I'm a sucker for movies with big cast, because to me, it helps flesh out the world and helps, you know, continue to reinforce the magic of movies. But with Saving Private Ryan, Spielberg pulled off something interesting, because with the exception of Tom Hanks, he puts all of the bigger movie stars, which again, this is not a movie that has a lot of big movie stars. A lot of the stars that are in this movie wouldn't go on to become stars for another 20, 30 years, but makes the majority of the cast like not lesser known 90s actors, but just kind of, again, more so character actors, and he relies on their chemistry that they have together in order to really flesh out the magic of this movie. And it's something rather unique that not only continues to show Spielberg's growth and just skill as a director, but also again continuing the idea of the power of these types of ensemble casts. As you're traveling along with these guys, you really get to know them as characters, and it really helps to flesh out their kind of camaraderie, and to me helps reinforce what makes this film so great and still held on this pedestal of being like the greatest war movie ever made. Pulp Fiction. Again, a film that I really shouldn't have to say anything more on, considering just how much this film helped change the game in terms of the filmmaking landscape. I guess what this film has to contribute in terms of the ensemble cast, the one confusing thing that I found is how people consider John Travolta to be the lead character of this movie because he appears in the most scenes. But to me, the only kind of unifying thing between all the different storylines in this movie is the briefcase.
Is that what I think it is? Mm-hmm.
It's a tricky thing to do, kind of balancing out characters versus world, how you want to use them as props versus fleshing them out really as people. And I'm not going to say that these guys aren't fleshed out as people. You really get to know every single one of them. But again, continuing with kind of Tarantino's more cartoony, movie-esque world, you know, if you will. Like, you don't look at any one of his characters and believe, you know that you're watching movie characters when you see these guys. You're not necessarily believing that they're real people. And he's done more with that in more recent years, but this was only his second movie, and again, coming out the gate just showed what a powerhouse he was and not to be messed with. Boogie Nights. Now, of Paul Thomas Anderson's two movies that in the late 90s that involved gigantic, sprawling ensemble cast, I go with this one over Magnolia because I just recently watched Magnolia and I actually have a few problems with that movie that I don't think are shared by a lot of fans of that movie. But needless to say, my problems with Magnolia come primarily to how the cast is utilized in service of the themes of that movie, which is again just the idea of everything in the universe is random and just things just happen by chance, and that's fine, but to me it kind of takes away from how those characters are each utilized, and to me that movie doesn't utilize its ensemble very well. Boogie Nights, on the other hand, again, is not telling the story of kind of just randomness. It's telling the story of a specific time and place in Hollywood, which obviously helps. And I like those types of movies where, again, similar to what I think David Simon did so brilliantly with The Wire, kind of utilizing each one of these characters in order to kind of give you different viewpoints and glimpses into how this world operates. You know, Burt Reynolds as the aging director who's seen it all. Julianne Moore is kind of the more experienced star. Mark Wahlberg and Heather Graham as kind of the up-and-coming stars. Don Cheadle as, you know, kind of the guy facing oppression from all different angles. You know, not taken as seriously enough in the porn industry, but also not taken serious enough by the bank in order to get a loan, you know? And kind of how each and every single one of those characters and their own struggles within this world helps to flesh out just the idea of porn. And besides being, in my mind, Paul Thomas Anderson's only mainstream movie, it also helped to make stars out of people who were not stars at the time. You know, it was Mark Wahlberg's first big gig. It brought Burt Reynolds back out of obscurity. You know, Heather Graham, Don Cheadle, John C. Reilly, Alfred Molina, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Thomas Jane, the list goes on. Tropic Thunder. Now, this is one that, again, is very personal to me because besides being my favorite comedy of the 2000s run of comedies, it also might be just my favorite comedy movie in general.
Yes, retarded maybe, braces on his legs, but he charmed the pants off next to him and won a ping pong competition. That ain't retarded. He was a goddamn war hero.
But here's the confusing thing. So everybody's usual go-to when it comes to the 2000s, to a choice for a 2000s comedy for ensembles, is always Anchorman. And that always confused me because, yeah, those side characters are funny, but that is Will Ferrell's movie first and foremost. Tropic Thunder, on the other hand, is a movie where the ensemble cast is so essential to that movie that Ben Stiller's part almost kind of comes off as the least interesting, which, not to take anything away from him, his part as Tug Speedman is still absolutely hysterical, but it's just the fact of everybody is just acting circles around him so much that, like, that movie kind of doesn't work without the ensemble.
What do you mean, you people?
Now, again, not to take anything away from Anchorman, but with Tropic Thunder, like, just to give an example, like, obviously, you have, like, the kind of the war on all fronts. You know, like, you got Robert Downey Jr. and Jack Black and Jay Baruchel and Brandon T. Jackson kind of supporting Stiller in the one crowd. You got Danny McBride and Nick Nolte off on their one side. You got McConaughey, Bill Hader, and Tom Cruise on the U.S. side, and Steve Coogan kind of trying to act as the intermediary between all three forces. And, again, based on what this movie was trying to say about Hollywood at the time, just the fact of all these actors are given such different types of performances than what they are used to.
Everybody knows you never go full retard. You don't buy that? That's Sean Penn, 2001, I Am Sam. Remember? Went full retard. Went home empty-handed.
And again, it's similar to Boogie Nights in the sense of where you kind of need each and every single one of these guys in order to kind of flesh out and make this movie and this translation of this world work. Because I feel like, again, if you take out one piece of this puzzle, kind of the gigantic satire and skewering of Hollywood, and this does not work. The Lord of the Rings trilogy. Now again, this one is an absolute cheat, I'll admit to that. I don't subscribe to the idea of an entire trilogy qualifying as one movie, but this is the one instance where I actually do think that applies here, because again, like, this isn't a situation like the Star Wars trilogy, like the Dark Knight trilogy. Like, Peter Jackson envisioned this very similar to the way that Tolkien originally envisioned it, which is that this is one story split into 3 parts, where it truly, to me, defines the idea of the trilogy, which is Act 1, what's it called? The first installment is Act 1, second installment is Act 2, last one is Act 3. The idea of splitting the traditional story structure and utilizing that in the form of individual movies rather than the typical 3-act structure that you see within one movie. And still, to me, the reason why I go with this as the most consistent trilogy is because this is the only trilogy to me that I've ever seen that actually does that. And in order to make that work, besides just, again, Jackson's love for the original source material and the groundbreaking special effects that they were using at the time, and all the brilliant filmmaking techniques that were utilized, these movies obviously don't work without its cast. Because again, it's not a situation where you need every single character and plot line in order to make the story work. But again, the thing that makes these movies so brilliant and so special is not just the fact of it's a great story, it's also just the fact of it truly establishes a world. And where I find that each kind of different facet is interesting is that it kind of, with each new character and new setting that they bring in, it helps to flesh out and kind of expand the idea of Middle Earth to the point where even if a random stop off in an elf village or getting captured by men or having to deal with giant spiders and orcs doesn't necessarily feel essential to the plot, or just feels like just another opposition when it's like, oh my god, let's just get to the finish line. It's like, no, the thing that makes these movies so special is not just the journey, but it really is making you understand that you're going through a journey through a fantasy realm. And with the thing that makes fantasy so impressive is the fact that you get so many different crazy settings that help to flesh out and make you fully realize the experience. The Godfather. So remember when I said that The Lord of the Rings is the only trilogy that I've seen that acts as one cohesive story? I lied. Because the way that Francis Ford Coppola originally conceived of the first 2 Godfather movies was that they were one continuing story. The reason why 3, it doesn't feel like a perfect trilogy, is because 3 was not even considered at the time that he was filming 1 and 2, which were filmed back to back. That was always conceived as an epilogue, which again is why I don't hate 3 the way that everybody else does. But the interesting thing about 1 and 2 and kind of how they help delineate each other is that 1 is kind of the setup with the family, and 2 is exclusively about Michael, while you have young Vito as kind of the backstory, kind of the other side of the coin, in order to kind of show how Michael is doing everything different than his dad did. It's again one of the reasons why I think 2 is also just as perfect of a film, because it's still the only film that I've seen that acts as both a perfect sequel and a prequel. But 1, besides the fact that it's my favorite fucking movie of all time, and in my mind, the greatest movie ever made, I think the reason why I keep coming back to 1 as not only my favorite, but also the best use of the ensemble is because, again, it's about the family. Like, it's not quite focused on Michael and Vito, even though they are kind of the 2 spearheads of the family, but it's also obviously about Sonny, about Tom, about Connie, about Kay, and kind of how each of them kind of, again, help to contribute to this story and the overall, the ups and downs that the Corleone family goes through, as well as the supporting players. Again, it's a thing that I think I always loved about mob movies, and I think it's also one of the things that kind of gets lost in the shuffle in some of the more modern day ones, which are, of course, the characters. It doesn't feel like it manages to write and use each of the characters in a way that doesn't feel like they're kind of props to carry on the next phase of the story. Like, you really do feel like you're watching kind of the grown-up versions of a family in this movie. Very naturalistic, the relationships between the brothers, like, you feel like you're watching like an older brother and a younger brother kind of tussling with each other. Obviously, when Don Vito is standing over Sonny's grave and you see him weeping, like, you realize, like, that's not a Don mourning the death of one of his soldiers. That's just a dad weeping over his son. Besides making this movie a lot more relatable, it just helps make the themes of this movie overall a lot more powerful, and it is completely carried by its ensemble. Those were my absolute top 10 favorite movies with ensemble cast. What did you guys think? Do you guys think that I actually did a good job of explaining kind of what an ensemble cast is and how each of these movies kind of contributed to that idea in their own individual way? Whatever it is, leave a comment in the comment section below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Follow me across all social medias. They are in the description as well. And of course, be sure to follow my podcast, Talkin TV podcast. New episodes are up every single Wednesday. I'll see you guys next time.